and gifts worth over $1.7 million during his tenure. From the world of tennis, world number 1, Jannik Sinner has reached the final of the Cincinnati Open. The Italian star beat world number 4, Alexander Zverev, 7-6, 5-7, 7-6. Sinner braved through a hip issue to defeat the German. The world number 1 was seen limping during the match. Over in cricket, Australia plans to host England to celebrate the 150th anniversary of Test cricket. That'll be at the Melbourne Cricket Ground or the MCG. Cricket Australia says they will host England for a one-off test in March 2027. The first ever test was played in 1877 at the MCG, one that Australia had won by 45 runs. And in cycling, Polish cyclist Kasia Niewiadoma won the Tour de France. Kasia won the race by the barest of margins, just 4 seconds, to beat her rival Demi Fullering in the final stages of the race. This is the narrowest margin of victory for both men and women's events. Now, no one wants a match to be called off. It doesn't help anyone, doesn't help the teams, the players involved, the organizers who had put this together, and definitely not the fans. And more often than not, almost always, in fact, a cancelled match, a match abandoned because of fans, isn't a pretty sight. The animosity is gruesome and nothing good can come of it. A football match got called off in Kolkata last evening, the season's first Kolkata derby, in fact, the biggest football fixture in the country, in a city that arguably holds the key to the sport itself. A match that was featuring city giants Mohun Bagan and East Bengal was called off because fans of both clubs were protesting the rape and murder of a trainee doctor in Kolkata's hospital. The match was abandoned even before kickoff, and the decision was taken after Kolkata police met with the organizers. It's just the only thing they could resort to because it was a massive crowd. Take a look at what Salt Lake Stadium had turned into. Now, we often advocate keeping sports away from politics, but it is difficult to do so, and we've seen enough examples everywhere, time and again. One, of course, was last evening, the protests in Kolkata, a stark example. But the matter at hand too is one that is bound to pervade everything. People in Kolkata and all over the country, in fact, have been enraged, and it's only been a week since the incident. Now, this is one episode that has unified voices all over the country. Football and its fans didn't stay away from this either. Fans of Mohun Bagan and East Bengal united to show their dismay over the heinous crime that had taken place in their city in India. We want justice! 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 This protest derailed the Kolkata derby, but to think that fans of these two clubs came together without caring for the game to take place is telling. That's the impact that this horrific episode has had on just about everyone in the country. Now, to give a little backgrounder to the uninitiated, Mohun Bagan versus East Bengal rivalry is massive. It is one of the most intense rivalries in the world of football, popularly called the Kolkata derby. This face-off in India dates back to over 100 years, and this is one contest that has not petered out despite the passing of time. Even today, the competition is just as fierce, and the one key aspect that makes this rivalry that much more exciting, intense and timeless are the fans. Fans of both the clubs cannot even see eye to eye. They will never be seen together. They are more fierce a rival off the pitch than the teams themselves on it are. Mohun Bagan is the oldest club in Asia, and it came to be in 1889. The club had players from Kolkata, the locals. And then, of course, East Bengal was formed some years later in 1920 to represent the immigrant population in Kolkata coming from, yes, East Bengal. So one club featuring the locals of Kolkata and the other the immigrants. The classic us versus them. The rivalry has a cultural and historical significance. There can be no common ground here. And to think the two clubs are barely stone's throw away from each other, less than 500 meters separate the two in the city. FIFA considers it to be one of the most iconic rivalries in the world. It stands at par with other international rivalries like, say, the El Clasico featuring Barcelona and Real Madrid, or the Manchester United and Liverpool derby. Now, while these two are intercity competitions, still boasting of intense strife and discord, the perfect example I can give to make a viewer outside the country relate to this face-off is that the Kolkata derby is pretty similar to that of the Milan derby, that pits city rivals AC Milan against Inter Milan. And just like in these matches, fans almost always get into brawls during the game and even after. So much so that the security for Kolkata derby is always on high alert, just to avoid any mishaps. Which is why these two sections of fans coming together for something far bigger than a game was very heartening and indeed a rare sight.
हम लोग मोहन बगान ईस्ट बंगाल बाद में पहले भारतीय एक भारतीय नारी के ऊपर अत्याचार हुआ है इस अत्याचार जो कोई वर्ड नहीं है इस अत्याचार को एक्सप्लेन कर सके
ये लड़ाई सिर्फ ईस्ट बंगाल मोहन बगान की नहीं है ये पूरा भारतीय का लड़ाई है ये आपका एक लड़की के ऊपर अत्याचार हुआ हम लोग का जो फेमस डर्बी है जो इतना सालों से मोहन बगान ईस्ट बंगाल का पूरा दर्शक यहाँ पे आके जमा होता है खेला एंजॉय करता है वो रातों रात बंद कर दिया
ये जो डर्बी है ये मुद्दा उठाने का था दो गैलरी से एक ही आवाज एक ही नारा लगाना किया था कि वुमेन सेफ्टी हम लोग के सिटी में अभी सेफ नहीं है और हम लोग का एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन जो है वो फ्लॉप हो चुका है
We are protesting against that heinous crime so that the actual criminals are arrested and the actual criminals get punishment. We are protesting for that only.
Now, all of this pretty much sums up what fans really felt. They weren't East Bengal or Mohun Bagan supporters on the day. They were enraged people who stood together in protest. Many fans were even arrested because the demonstration turned a little rough. Police had to resort to a baton charge. Now, as the match was cancelled before the fans enter the stadium, both the teams will be awarded 1 point each. The fans will, of course, get the refund for their tickets, but I'm sure they weren't really concerned about any of this. Because for the very first time in the history of this rivalry, fans of the two sides came together for something, keeping their differences aside, showing that there was something far more important than a rivalry on the football pitch. Sure, a rowdy protest isn't the answer, is not the solution, but it showed another example of sport and those involved in it, invested in it, uniting for a larger cause, one that even puts their bitter rivalry for decades to one side. The Premier League has kicked off and there have been, of course, quite a few moments emerging from the first weekend, but we are talking about the Man City versus Chelsea game, or rather two players whom this clash ended up being about. City striker Erling Haaland and Chelsea left-back Marc Cucurella. Manchester City beat Chelsea 2-0, but no one's cared about the result or the scoreline. The biggest talking point of the game was Chelsea and Cucurella being humbled by an Erling Haaland masterclass. The image of the clash for me was this. Yeah, you can sense how cold that image was, quite a scornful glare there by Haaland. The Spanish left-back had an outing he would want to forget. Erling Haaland not only ran through his defence, but also bullied him to that ground. That's what you saw there. But why this particular image of Haaland giving a beaten Cucurella the cold shoulder? Shouldn't it be a goal scored by Manchester City or the gloomy face of their new manager Enzo Maresca, who lost his first game in charge? That's because there was some history that these two players were carrying forward into the game. After Spain won the Euros, Cucurella did this.
Jala tiembla, que viene Cucurella. Jala tiembla, toma una galleta.
It's a rap that Cucurella sang during Euro's victory parade, and while the left back did talk about him eating paella or drinking Estrella, he went on to challenge Erling Haaland. He did that and of course didn't stop with that. He went on to rap about Haaland trembling when the two would face each other next. So the rap may not have made a lot of waves when it did get released by Cucurella, but it sure shot up and got a lot more attention now after the City versus Chelsea clash. And obviously the irony there, not to praise Cucurella's musical skills, but to mock his football abilities. The trickiest part about the internet, it remembers everything, especially all the boo-boos and the mistakes. And the reason Cucurella was trolled all the more is obviously because Haaland gave it back to the Chelsea player and at the game. Haaland was seen bypassing Cucurella very calmly, smirking at the Spaniard who was yelling for help after falling down onto the ground, and this continued even after the match ended.
He is a funny man. Last season he asked for my shirt. And this summer, he sings a song about me.
Sure, Haaland saw the funny side of all this, who took this as a bit of a banter between the two players, but the internet didn't. That's the thing about taking jibes against your opponent, whether in a soundbite or in a rap song. When they turn out as you predicted or you preempted, then it's great. Your statements or lyrics in this case become legendary. But when it backfires, the internet will make sure you remember this one for months to come and rub it in real good too, just to add salt to your wounds. And Cucurella surely is hurting, because even if the Spaniard bounces right back from this performance, he won't be facing Haaland or City until January, unless the two face off in the FA Cup, which is unlikely. So the insult will remain for months and will continue to haunt Cucurella until the next time he somehow overturns this, when the two face off on the field. But Cucurella can be happy about one thing. One silver lining from this otherwise foolish move that has backfired. His rap is trending on the internet, just not in the way the Spaniard expected it or wished it to. But hey, maybe this could also be a side hustle or an alternate path the Spanish footballer can explore. If all else fails, there's always some music. This is the image that has scorched internet all through the weekend. Carlos Alcaraz breaking his racket as he crumbled to a loss to Gael Monfils at the Cincinnati Masters. Fans watched in shock as Carlos Alcaraz destroyed, not his opponent, no, but his racket instead, slamming it multiple times to submission. The poor apparatus sent to its grave in the most gruesome manner. Not the kind of sight that any Spanish tennis lover is used to, let alone an Alcaraz fan. And it's been a fabulous year for the young 21-year-old. In fact, it's been one of his best years till date. Sure, he lost the Olympic gold medal match to Novak Djokovic last week, but the Spaniard has had an otherwise incredible 2024 after a rather dull 2023, winning 2 Grand Slam titles this year, the French Open and the Wimbledon. But I know that shouldn't be the point to make here. There isn't a need to break a racket even if you're having a bad time on court, even if it's the absolute worst. Fans were shocked, and of course the comparisons came flooding in of how no one saw Rafa Nadal get this violent or angry on court ever. In fact, some years back, in 2019, a reporter in an interview asked Rafael Nadal how many rackets he had broken on court during his career so far, and Rafael Nadal had indicated this: 0. He went on to say that my family wouldn't have allowed me to break a racket. Breaking a racket means I'm not in control of my emotions. Something so paramount for a sports person to keep the focus on the game. Something to think about for Alcaraz in there. Going back to what preceded that moment of madness, though, it was not an easy outing for Carlos or Monfils for that matter. In fact, Monfils was trailing. He was down a set when play got suspended, breaking Alcaraz's rhythm, of course. In particular, the match resumed the next day, which saw Monfils making quite the strong comeback. And Alcaraz losing his cool on court. And look, this by no means is an attempt at passing judgment on a player venting. Emotions are a big part of sport. Players play to win, and they play with their hearts on their sleeves. Seeing composure and calmness is very rare, and yes, it's a top quality that very few possess. Many of the best players in the world are those who can be calm when the going gets tough. The point is, Alcaraz went nowhere from that moment of utter rage and violence. It continued going downhill, and a new racket, of course, didn't make much of a difference.
I felt like it was the worst match that I've ever played in my career. I've been practicing really well. I was feeling great. But I couldn't play. I want to forget it and try to move on to New York.
Alcaraz, of course, took a while to understand the implications of this act and the effect it had generated. So he issued an apology on his social media platform a little later. He had to, but as they say, damage had already been done. In fact, after this episode, Nike, Alcaraz's sponsor, unveiled the Spaniard's look for New York for the US Open. A black sleeveless t-shirt for Alcaraz, very a la Nadal, this outfit, throwing up visions of a young Spaniard who in fact nailed the sleeveless look when he came onto the scene, branded it as his own. And the irony of this, of course, was not lost on fans. An attempt to try and move past the racket-breaking incident by this piece of marketing clearly failed. Fans running riot online, calling Nike out on their look for Alcaraz, saying obviously the color is black to symbolize Carlos Alcaraz's dark side. One fan also channeling Rihanna, terming this as good boy gone bad. So basically that did not go down too well either. The comparisons between Alcaraz and Nadal hitting a peak with this episode. Now, a way to look at this, of course, Alcaraz is only 21 and there's so much scrutiny on every single thing he does and will continue to be there here on. He is in the big league now, and every act of his, both on and off court, has consequences. He's a role model, so clearly what will make him an icon or one of the greatest ever won't just be the magic he creates with his racket on court while playing, but also how he treats it when he's not playing. What's his demeanor like? How can he keep a check on his emotions to the degree he possibly can? There are no place for saints anywhere, but he's going to be constantly judged and compared to Nadal every step of the way. So might as well start learning some lessons that are required off the court and not just on it. Time for last serve. Romanian gymnast Ana Barbosu finally laid her hands on her much-awaited Olympic bronze medal in a ceremony organized in Bucharest. After USA's Jordan Chale's third-place finish was stripped off by the Court of Arbitration for Sports, Barbosu was promoted back to the third place. Take a look. Quite an emotional journey this for both the gymnasts involved, Jordan as well as Barbosu. But that wraps up Firstpost here for us today. I'll see you again tomorrow. Till then, do take care. Bye-bye.
Hello and welcome to Fast and Factual. My name is Utsav Parekh and here are the top stories of the day.